Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. So most of you know me. I've met a lot of you guys before. I served 6 years in the House. In the last 2 years, I've represented you in the Florida Senate. And I only had one of those 2-year seats. All 40 Senate seats were up, and so they did a lottery. I lost out. Even numbered. We had a 2-year seat, so now I'm running for a 4-year seat. I take campaigning pretty seriously. We've knocked on over 60,000 doors. We've made over 50,000 phone calls. So I got them boots from Larry, Commissioner Harvey, man. He knows I need some new shoes and boots and stuff. So, but you know, I do take it seriously, and this is not about me. Anybody in this room could do what I do. Y'all could run, and y'all could serve, and you do as good a job or a better job than me. What it is about keeping my opponent and their side from winning and representing us. And like I say, this is not about me. It's about a conservative agenda that we have, what we've done, what I've done, able to do in the last 8 years up there, and keeping those, as you said, Bobby, from putting on the brakes on that. So think about this. I came into office, our budget was $66.7 billion. This is in 2010. Last year, our budget was $88.7 billion. We've cut taxes every single year to the aggregate tune of about $10 billion. Cut taxes, paid back debt of almost $9 billion, $3.5 billion in reserves, and yet we have $20 billion more. I remember knocking on a door, this was a few years back on a campaign, and I had a retired professor, and he said, he looked at my thing and he handed it right back to me. He says, "You can't do this because you're cutting taxes and you want to invest in education." They just don't get it. They just think that the way you make it, the economy better, to make the state better, is raise taxes. And if you can just give government more money, we'll make everything better. We cut taxes, we cut regulations, and don't listen to, Bobby said, the lies out there. I'm telling you, the tax cuts we've made have affected only the small businesses. Well, they affected the big business. When you talk about a $50,000 cut on corporate income tax, or $100,000, that affects publics too. They can't even tell it though. But for the small businesses in Florida, it affects them in a big way, in a positive way that we want to grow. There's not too many business owners that don't want to expand or grow their business. And what we've done through the regulatory process, we've been able to do that. We were ranked #1 fiscal responsible state in the nation, #1. Now the bad news, we were ranked 49th, I think, in tort reform and laws, and I'm dedicated to make sure those are the things that we continue to work on. Matter of fact, one of the biggest things we've got coming up in this election, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out, my belief is that the next governor is going to elect 3 Supreme Court justices. Think about that. You think about a race, we're talking about 2-year terms and 4-year terms. We're talking about Supreme Court justices that could be up there 20, 25 years. And if you just saw the paper just a few days ago, we had 2 cases, one R.J. Reynolds and one Geico, where the 4th Circuit Court the Supreme Court took their rulings and overturned their rulings and awarded huge dollar amounts on bad faith. You're talking about a company, Geico, that paid within 72 hours, yet they awarded millions and millions of dollars in bad faith. The Supreme Court had no reason to do that, to even take on these cases. You know why they did it? Because they can. That's why they did it, and they're liberal, and there's 3 of them that are outgoing, and they want to set an impact, and they're going to do that. And this is the most important governor's race that we've had in generations because of the effect of the Supreme Court. But then I'm going to go, like I said, we're going to take seriously work. One of the things my core belief is of the problems that you and I face, the problems that the next generation face, are going to be solved by the next generation if we allow them the opportunity to do that. When I grew up in Gainesville, most of the businesses in Gainesville were owned by individuals 40 years ago out of high school. Now most of the businesses are owned by corporations and franchises. And you got to wonder, why in 40 years have we shifted an economy where it's so incredibly hard for young people to start a business? Well, you look at the regulatory and legal environment, you say you understand why. And we've got to reverse that trend if we're going to give people an opportunity to go out there and solve the problems of the world. I talk to college kids all the time. I never use the word capitalism or free enterprise. What I do is I talked about what kind of opportunity they're going to have when they graduate. Are they going to be able to go start a business? Are they going to be able to go out and change the world and make a difference? Think about Facebook and Google. 2 big game changers, right? The way that we communicate, the way that we do things. When I talk to college kids, I tell them, I said, those are companies, multi-billion-dollar companies that were started by people in a dorm room or a bedroom. I said, you know what they have in common? They're in the last unregulated industry in the United States. The last unregulated industry. That's the only industry that allows people to do that. In manufacturing, all the rest of them, you're not going to be able to do that. And we've got to shift this thing so we give young people the opportunity to go out and solve the problems. My opponent is clear about this. Government is the answer to the problems. That's what she keeps repeating. Give us more money, give us more power, and the government, we'll make government great again, I guess is her slogan. So, but we're working on that. We've got to go back, and I think this is the other thing, and I'm just going to encourage you all to do this. We have got a job to do in educating our kids. The schools do a good job in certain parts of that, but they lack the fundamental part of who we are. Where do we come from? What is our culture? And matter of fact, it's even being revisionist history talked in some schools to talk about our heritage is not one that we should be proud of. I think Columbus, Ohio just got rid of Columbus Day and changed the name of it there. Our heritage and our history are not to be proud of. And that's what's being taught to our kids. And we have got an obligation and a duty. And it's never been, should have never been on the government's part all the time to educate our kids. They can do a good job at parts of that, but it's up to us to understand and understand where these battle lines are being drawn. If you think about, so after our Revolutionary War and our Constitution, France had a revolution and constitution. Then they had another revolution, another constitution. I think they've had 15 constitutions or 16 constitutions. In the 1830s, America is a stable, prosperous country, one of the most stable places and prosperous places in the world. So they send Alexis de Tocqueville over to the United States to find out what's going on over there. And so he has a fascinating book, if you ever read it, about his journeys to the United States in the 1830s. But what he talks about, why he thinks America is so great, is what he calls her domestic virtue. And her domestic virtue is family, church, community, not government. He didn't come back and say, you know what? They got a great government that really makes everything happen, provides all this stuff for the people, and that's what's making America great. Government was not listed in there. Matter of fact, another thing I tell young people when I go, I said, you know, from about the 1830s or so until the 1940s and 50s, one of the most prominent places in Washington, D.C. was not the White House or the Capitol. It was a patent office. That's what people went to Washington for, is to move their patents, move their new ideas forward. And now that's changed because now we've invested all this authority and power and money into government to solve our problems. And that's not the way we were founded. That is not our culture. And that history shows that's not a recipe for success, is to invest in the government and let the government solve all of our problems. So it's up to us to do this. I'm going to encourage you just to get out and vote. We talked about that, but not just get out and vote. This is what you got to do. This is what I want to ask you to do. Me and Bobby, you got to do this as a candidate. I've been working 6, 7 days a week for 6 months. I took a week off. I go on a mission trip every year. I take 1 week off. It's the best week of my life. And that's my time to get away from campaigning. And outside of that, it's all work. I'm going to ask you guys, and I know a lot of people in here, I'm preaching to the choir in here, that you work and you get things done. I'm going to encourage you to encourage your friends. Early voting starts in 10 days, or for 10 days before the election. We've already had absentee voting out. I'm going to encourage you to spend an hour a day and tell your friends to spend an hour a day doing whatever you need to do. Calling people, Facebooking people. Did they go out to vote? Call them again. Did you go out and vote? Call your friends. Tell your friends to go out and vote. That's a 10-hour investment for 4 years of a governorship race, for Senate races, for state representative races, and for 3 Supreme Court justices in the state of Florida. The hour a day, we commit to that if you can do it, and we're all busy, but if you can spend that time and dedicate yourself, be intentional. God says be intentional in what you're going to do. Spend your time being intentional. Spend an hour a day for 10 days in early voting, get people out there. We get the turnout, we'll win. They get the turnout, they win, we suffer for a long time. So I'm encouraged that we're gonna pull out a lot of these races, and we're gonna continue on the track that we're going. But it's all up to us to make sure that happens. So thank you, God bless you guys.